Hi viewer, I appreciate your company on this visit to the Gold Coast, Surfers Paradise, Queensland, Australia. I've been there 3 times, once with my parents in 1976, again with my wife Lily in 1990, and a final time in the year 2000 on a stopover in Brisbane from a trip to Noumea, Caledonia. There's a very good highway to the Gold Coast from Brisbane heading south. It's about an hour's drive to places like Southport, Coolangatta, Surfers Paradise. Here's a road map showing the same trip. This map shows the various stopovers: Southport, Surfers Paradise, Burleigh Heads, and Coolangatta. This is the Gold Coast area. There's also a train system from Brisbane. The Gold Coast reminds me very much of Miami, Florida. It's all high-rises, and it's not really my favorite place to visit. It tends to be a favorite of Japanese tourists who come in large numbers, to the point that Japanese shopkeepers in the area all speak Japanese. Nevertheless, in spite of the large population density, the beaches are great and the surf is good, and there's lots to do. Just a few shots to show the degree of civilization. The buildings are tall and ultra-modern, and there's loads of shopping. During my second trip, I spent a week in timeshare, quite high up on a nice looking flat overlooking the ocean. There are very many large hotels. And loads of apartment blocks. Surfers Paradise is one of my favorite places. There's lots of Gold Coast shopping malls. Here's a statue of David, which I've seen in Florence, Italy, in a shopping mall. Now we're walking down to the entrance to Surfers Paradise. This sign lets us know we've arrived at the beach. Here's a night market at Surfers Paradise. Now we're on our way to Southport to visit SeaWorld. SeaWorld is excellent value and will take up a full day. There's lots of large aquariums and entertainment. This is a stingray, perhaps like the one that recently killed the Australian Stephen Irwin near Port Douglas. Dolphins. There's also polar bear. And loads of entertainment, from pirate craft to high-tech, ultra-scary roller coasters, and a cable car system. Now we'll move on to the Warner Brothers movie world. It's very much like Universal City that I visited in Los Angeles. And once again, it's a full day's excursion. Batman is a big theme. Like SeaWorld, there's loads of entertainment, including a scary roller coaster. And they're happy to take your money in the shopping studios. This is a Wild West mining theme. Rides. This Race Academy offers quite a lengthy show. I seem to recall it took about an hour, with lots of special effects and acrobatic events. It's very entertaining, and there's some very loud bangs. A blast from the past. Leaving movie world, we dropped into Bond University. Alan Bond, after which the university is named, just lives about 3 blocks from where I live, down in Cottesloe Beach. I think the university caters mainly for overseas students, but it's got a lovely campus, and it was good fun looking around. Surfer's Paradise is quite aptly named. It actually does have a great surf, and when I went swimming there in 1976, before I ended up in a wheelchair, it was actually very challenging surf. Cane toad purses made from real tanned cane toads are available for purchase. Here's a hippie bus. Thanks, viewer, for joining me on this quick trip to Surfer's Paradise and the Gold Coast, south of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. I do hope you have a good day. I welcome you, dear viewer, to this quick trip to Brisbane, capital city of Queensland, Australia. My name is Don. This map shows Brisbane situated on the ocean and also on the Brisbane River. The Brisbane River has a number of oxbows, and provides a beautiful setting for the city. It is a beautiful city and reminds me much of Perth, where I live. There is an excellent public transport system, as this map shows. A satellite view of the coastline showing the city of Brisbane, situated on the oxbows of the Brisbane River. Here we have a close-up aerial photograph. A view from the plane coming into land, showing the central business district and some of the major bridges across the Brisbane River. The Brisbane Airport is a modern affair. I've been to Brisbane a number of times, but on my last trip I flew from Noumea, French Caledonia, to Brisbane and then on to Perth. Brisbane has grown immensely in the last few years, as this 1959 photograph shows. There are a lot of large buildings under construction. A panoramic view of Brisbane. Most of the Australian cities are on water, and the ocean and the river are very important to people in Brisbane. Let's just have a few river shots. Cycling along the river on the many cycle paths. The modern freeway system along the river. Sailing. Of course, swimming is very important in the hot climate. Cruising on the Brisbane River. Let's have a quick look at Chinatown. There are some very nice Brisbane malls. Look at all that construction. The tall building to the right is the Brisbane Town Hall. A contrast of the older town hall with modern ultra-tech buildings in the background. The Brisbane Central Business District. A contrast of the old and new. Brisbane by night. I do appreciate your company on this quick trip to Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Have a good day. Thanks for joining me on this quick trip to Bundaberg, Queensland, home of the famous Bundy rum, to which I must admit I'm a bit partial. My wife Lily and myself spent a 2-week enjoyable holiday with a week in Surfers Paradise and a week driving up to Port Douglas with stopovers in such places as Bundaberg, Cairns and Townsville. Being partial to Bundaberg rum, a stopover in Bundaberg for me was a necessity. It's about a 50-mile or 50-kilometer drive from the Bruce Highway on State Highway 3 to the east. Bundaberg is a famous tourist destination. It's located directly on the ocean and is the entrance to the Great Barrier Reef. It has some very good islands and great scuba diving, as well as touring the sugarcane fields and botanical gardens and the Bundaberg distillery. It's not a very large city as cities go, and it's almost directly located on the level with only one hill. It does have a bit of an ocean port, mainly for yachts, although it does ship bulk sugar on ocean liners. The town greatly benefits from the Burnett River, which you see here with these bridges. On your way into the town, there's the Mystery Craters, about 25 million years old. Some people call them craters of the moon. They are probably volcanic remains. Like most cities, the town is well laid out with lots of retail buildings. Here's the central business district with the Bundaberg General Post Office to the right. The Botanical Gardens is worth a good half-day visit. It's got numerous beautiful flowers, not to mention a sugar museum and a railway based on the old sugar cane steam engines. Bert Hinkler is celebrated in the Botanical Gardens. He was an early Bundaberg resident, world-renowned as an aviator who flew from England to Bundaberg and also crossed the South Atlantic, the second person after Lindenberg. His home shown here was transported from England and has been erected as the Ferrymead House Sugar Museum. It's $5 to tour the museum. Sugarcane is central to Bundaberg, and a little railway runs through the Botanical Gardens. Sugar cane is still processed in Bundaberg in large buildings such as this one. Here's a sugarcane crop. In the early days, the sugarcane was cut by hand, with many workers bitten by the highly venomous taipan snakes, which used to lurk there. A major use of sugarcane is the Bundaberg distillery, and here is a shot of the sugarcane being brought in on narrow gauge railway to the rum distillery. I really like Bundaberg root beer and frequently drink it. It's another major consumer of Bundaberg sugar. Bundaberg rum is exported worldwide, and it has a real reputation. It's quite a unique flavor, a bit of an acquired taste, I'm afraid. It's extremely well advertised, and its trademark is the polar bear. Be warned, too much consumption of Bundaberg rum can make you look like this gentleman, a mural in the backpackers hostel, Bundaberg. The distillery offers good tours, followed by free samples of the rum at the end. A central point is a gigantic tank of molasses, which is used to manufacture the rum. A view of the interior manufacturing process. At the end, you're allowed to sample the beverages. Bundaberg is well known to backpackers because many are hired to pick fruit on a seasonal basis. Thanks, viewer, for joining me on this quick trip to Bundaberg, Queensland. I do hope you have a good day. Thanks for joining me on this trip to the Whitsunday Islands, a complex of 74 islands in Queensland, Australia. Coming up the Bruce Highway from Brisbane, one can turn off to Airlie Beach and on to Chute Harbour, where the road ends. From there are ferries to numerous tourist resorts on quite a variety of islands. Hamilton Island is very famous for its 5-star resorts. And the Whitsunday Island, the largest of the island complex, is famous for Whitehaven Beach. This somewhat cluttered and detailed map shows the ferry routes out to the islands. There's a huge amount of information on the World Wide Web. And this page gives an introduction to the White Sundays, a group of sun-drenched islands paint a magnificent view that will not only captivate your heart, but will leave you convinced that tomorrow really doesn't matter. I spent the night in Airlie Beach, and this is probably the most popular tourist resort because it can be reached by car. Not only offers a nice beach, but it's got quite a range of pubs and restaurants and coffee bars. And of course there's lots of fishing and scuba diving and sailing. Another web page giving more information about some of the islands which can be reached from Chute Harbour. Here we are at Airlie Beach. We'll take a few quick looks at the tourist complex built up the side of the hill. As you can see, there are numerous resorts and hotels. Here is the main drag. There are lots of walks around Airlie Beach. Some views of the beach itself with the yachts anchored out. There's a web page on the Airlie waterfront. A great base for sailing and diving. Unfortunately, Airlie Beach gets stingers or poisonous jellyfish during the months of November through to March or April. Consequently, they built a large swimming area called the Airlie Beach Lagoon. Here's some information on a large sign overlooking the Airlie Beach, warning swimmers of the various types of poisonous jellyfish. You can always sun yourself on the sand. We stayed at a tourist resort overnight that featured cane toad races. Cane toads are quite a noxious pest in Queensland and are used by some people as substitute golf balls. Some views of the anchored yachts. Diving is a big attraction for all the Whitsunday Islands. There's not a lot at Chute Harbour. It's really just the base to catch the ferry to one of the Whitsunday Islands. Here's Chute Harbour with the car park overlooking the docks. These ferries take you to the luxury resorts on Hamilton Island. And they get over there pretty quickly as well. Now we're arriving on Hamilton Island to have a look around. Here's a web page advertising information on Hamilton Island. It's got its own airport, so some people fly in. A view of the Hamilton Island Harbour. Here's one of the luxury resort hotels on Hamilton Island. One of the wharfs. Let's wander around the pool. Like luxury hotels everywhere, there's lots of artwork and some sculpture. A rather pleasant coastal scene. Bronze dolphins and whales. The Whitsunday Islands have much better beaches than Airlie Beach. The sand is an absolute fine, white, pristine quality. Now we move on to the largest island, Whitsunday Island, which is famous for its Whitehaven Beach. A board walkway on Whitsunday Island. Oh, this is the life. Whitehaven Beach. There are all types of ship cruises on yachts, tall vessels, and luxury cruise vessels. Most people tend to go for a cruise to explore some of the islands. This architectural plan shows future developments for the Whitsundays. There's enormous expansion planned for this area. It'll never be quite the same. in another 5 years. Thanks for joining me for this tour of the Whitsunday Islands in Queensland, Australia. Have a good day, mate. Welcome on this quick visit to Townsville, North Queensland. Your narrator is Don. Approaching by plane, you see Magnetic Island out to sea. The tip of land is the Central Business District, broken by the Ross River. You can also see Castle Hill in the center. This aerial shot clearly shows the harbour, the yacht club to the bottom right, and of course Castle Hill. You can see the high-rise buildings in the Central Business District and the urban sprawl. Townsville, with a population of 130,000 people, is the largest tropical city north of the Tropic of Capricorn. Sorry, I do love old maps. This interesting map shows some of the larger islands off the Queensland coastline, including the Bruce Highway. Now we're moving into the city of Townsville, and this map shows not only the national parks, Magnetic Island, but also the suburbs that make up Townsville. A street map of the Central Business District. You can see Castle Hill, a large 300-meter monolithic red rock in the center of the city. Sorry, I gotta stop showing these old maps. 1975, Townsville. Townsville has matured greatly since the 1900s, became a city in 1903. Some of the original inhabitants, the Aboriginals. Townsville began as a gold rush city and also was a port for the export of sugarcane and other coastal products, and products from the interior tablelands, such as beef. Here's an early experimental kettle station in Townsville. And an early picture of the harbour. Note the steam locomotive. Now we move to the present, a modern picture of the harbour showing a tugboat and Castle Hill in the background. A view of the yacht club in Townsville, gateway to the Barrier Reef. Another aerial view taken towards sunset. Castle Hill is a great way to get a photograph of the Central Business District. A view of the city of Townsville about sunset. The same, but a bit closer up. A labeled photograph. Notice Magnetic Island off in the distance. The Jupiter Hotel is the local casino. Looking at the Central Business District, the same. Beginning in the 1870s, Townsville became very prosperous, particularly from the gold rush. This is reflected in some of the early buildings that exist today. I'm not sure when this building was built, but probably around the late 1800s. A more modern building, Jupiter's Casino. A good way to lose your money. I didn't spend long in Townsville, but the thing that really got me was going to the Reef HQ Aquarium. It was fantastic. Apparently it's got the best reef collection in the southern hemisphere. Let's quickly run through a few photographs taken through the glass. Not actually in the aquarium, this is a shipwreck, and there's great scuba diving off the coast of Townsville. The wall murals in Townsville are great. It's hard to believe this is actually painted on a brick wall. This wall mural at the Townsville Adventurers Resort is also really good. And that Aboriginal boy looks really angry and mean. Townsville has developed the Strand as the public beach area. Here it is with one of the play areas for children. In the tropics, you don't go swimming between November and May because of the stingers. When in Townsville, you will want to visit the Great Barrier Reef, an aerial shot of the reef near Townsville. Kite surfing is very popular. A special event in Townsville, the fireworks. Magnetic Island has about 2,000 permanent residents, and a lot of people commute daily from the island. There's regular ferries. As you can see, you don't have to wait very long. There's a large national park on the island and a lot of activities for tourists. They even boast their own newspaper called the Magnetic Times, which is on the internet. Here's its front page for today. Some of the activities on Magnetic Island include bushwalking and beach rides. And let's not forget a Guinness at the Irish Bar and Bistro. It's good that people have a sense of humor. I got a laugh out of this, particularly unruly ankle biters. Thanks for joining me on this quick visit to Townsville. I only spent a couple of days there, so I'm no expert, but I hope you did enjoy these pictures. Thanks, dear viewer, for joining me on this trip to Cairns, Queensland, Australia. I spent a couple of days in Cairns, having done a trip from Brisbane up through Bundaberg to Townsville, Cairns, and finally Port Douglas. It was a great, enjoyable experience. Cairns has the same climate as Hawaii. I love to be there during the July-August period when it's warm and dry, but it's not so pleasant during the hot, humid, sticky months of December, January, February, when it rains every day. It's also the entry into the Great Barrier Reef and has a large ocean port, international airport, and good fishing and scuba diving. Unlike Townsville, Cairns is not that big a place, and it's quite easy to roam the central business district, although it is gradually spreading out further and further. It's surrounded by high hills, 300 meters high, leading up to the Etherton tablelands. It's surrounded by the high hills of the tablelands to the west. This aerial view gives an idea of the mountains, the layout of the city on the ocean, and of course the airport. Cairns has an international airport, and I've landed there on stopovers between Sydney and Hawaii. This panoramic view gives you an idea of the coastline of Cairns. It's a very popular place for yachtsmen. Cairns has some deep ocean fishing, including fishing for marlin. And here's the marlin fishing. There are beautiful sunsets, and here's a picture of the Cairns shoreline at night. A picture of the Cairns Harbour showing the large number of yachts. Lots of places you can go to from Cairns with your own yacht. Perhaps the biggest industry for Cairns is tourism. It's second only in tourism to the Gold Coast and Sydney. So there's lots of tourist activities, such as riding in this 100 horsepower jet boat. Most people want to do some scuba diving or skin diving, and there's lots of training courses to get your PADI certification. The Great Barrier Reef, of course, is world famous for its coral. And there are some magnificent fish. Let's glance around the city. Not that much to take note of, but the hills in the background certainly attract your attention. This is Trinity Wharf. This is the Cairns Lagoon with the iron fish on the left being symbolic of Cairns and appearing on most of the postcards. Enjoying a tropical climate, Cairns would be my favorite place to live in Queensland. With a large airport, an activity in Cairns is skydiving, if you're inclined that way. The Bruce Highway is the major artery leading up the east coast of Queensland. At times it can get very congested. Cairns originally started as a jumping off point for a gold rush Palmer River back in the 1880s. But probably its main industry early on was in processing tropical timber. This industry continues even today. Let's go and visit Kuranda, a small town of about 650 people, located 25 kilometers from Cairns and 330 meters higher on the Etherton tablelands. You can get there on the Sky Car, apparently the longest in the world at 7.5 kilometers. The way I traveled was more traditional, by railway, and at times they used to run steam engines up this track. As you climb the hills, the view is magnificent over the tropical rainforest and back over the flatlands of Cairns. When you arrive at Kuranda and get off at the train station, there's a long walk up a steep hill, but there's a magnificent collection of restaurants and coffee shops, as well as tourist activities, including butterfly farms. There's lots of walkways through the tropical rainforest. Just walking around taking in the scenery is well worthwhile. There's an abundance of water and hydroelectricity is generated near Kuranda. There is still an Aboriginal population. Thanks, viewer, for joining me on this quick visit to Cairns and Kuranda, Queensland. Have a good day. It's nice to have you along, dear viewer, to Port Douglas, Queensland, Australia. When I was there in the 1980s, Port Douglas was virtually the end of the highway, and it's possible now to go a lot further north. It's north of Cairns, and a beautiful little luxury village of about 4,000 people. It's not very large, and it's got a huge hotel, the Sheraton, along with a 36-hole golf course. Tends to be a destination of very rich tourists, many from Japan, and also a lot of rich and famous people have built houses at the north end on the promontory. We're coming in by plane to Port Douglas. A good view of the promontory with the boathouse at the forefront, and to the far right, the yacht club and river. A much better view of the yacht club. Here's the promontory from another point of view, showing the luxurious houses. Back in the early days, Port Douglas serviced the sugarcane industry, and this early painting illustrates a sugarcane train and the traditional hotel. Sugarcane is still a major industry in Queensland. Some of the early sugarcane railways still survive today in Port Douglas. The beach is central to life in Port Douglas, and the center point beach is the 4 Mile Beach. In the tropics, beaches are dangerous. This sign shows the effects of winds on the level of the ocean. It's quite possible with an off the sea wind to raise water levels. During the summer months, Portuguese men-of-war, or stingers, are a very real threat. And of course, saltwater crocodiles are prevalent everywhere and multiplying with the Australian policy of protection. There are numerous signs warning of saltwater crocodile and to take care. The crocodiles are extremely deadly and ferocious. We'll just have a quick look at 4 Mile Beach. Notice the luxurious hotel resort in the foreground. I think you get the idea. It's very beautiful. St. Mary's by the Sea is an absolutely charming little church in Port Douglas. Where else do you get a window like this behind the altar? Fletcher's Botanic Gardens is worth a visit. Scuba diving and touring the reefs is a central point to visiting Port Douglas. Here's a boat that allows you to view the coral in dry comfort. We're not actually viewing the reef. This is a large display built at the yacht club. Many residents in Port Douglas really value their own yachts. There is real money invested in some of the craft. An aircraft engine recovered from an early bomber. A view of some of the buildings in Port Douglas. It's well laid out and easy to park. The Iron Bar Tavern is a real tourist trap and features cane toad races. The Sheraton Hotel is a five-star hotel that attracts a lot of wealthy tourists, and it's very well landscaped and laid out. Artwork at the hotel. This margarine mermaid was in one of the hotel restaurants. Even the Backpackers Hotel has some interesting wall murals. The Daintree National Park is a wet tropics World Heritage Area and worth a wander through. It's north of Port Douglas. This week, Steve Irwin was killed by a stingray while diving at Port Douglas. Thanks, viewer, for joining me on this trip to Port Douglas, Queensland, Australia. I do hope you have a good day.